Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I feel like most of my videos are really positive, talking about books, book recommendations, all the books that I just love so much to the point where I feel like I need you guys to read them. But today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be a little negative and I'm going to be telling you all the things that I absolutely hate, despise in books, romance novels specifically. Things like tropes, characters, personalities, anything related to books and what I hate about them. Because you guys always ask me like, what books don't you love? Because you just rave on and on about books, and that's because I like to make my channel a little bit positive, but not today. Today is going to be all my bookish pet peeves, just things I absolutely loathe in books. And you're gonna notice that a lot of these things are in a lot of books that I rave about, which is probably confusing, but like in the book I can get over it, but afterwards I'm like, I hate that so much. I hate when authors do that, or I hate when a character is like that. I literally listed like scrolls long on my notes of things I hate in books. I've been compiling this list for months. As I read books, I'm like picking things apart, and that is what today's video is going to be. Literally me ranting for probably 15 minutes straight. If you don't want to hear my negative opinions, then don't watch this video, but this is a place for haters today, and this is everything I hate in books. Starting off strong with one I feel like we can mutually agree on is shirtless men on covers of books. People on covers of books in general actually gets on my nerves so much, because I could literally be reading a book about a man that has the most disturbing troubled past where both his parents were killed and he has so much trauma and PTSD that he's overcoming, and then they'll slap a naked man on the cover. Like, why? First of all, it's embarrassing to read in public. A lot of people don't even buy those books because they don't even want them in their house. I just hate it so much, especially when the book is like not just like a steamy book about shirtless men. Like, what is the point? And then I hate in general when there's people on the cover. Having a person on the cover completely distorts my vision of the characters, and I hate it so much. It's like, who are you people and why are you on the cover of my book? And I feel like it just looks really tacky too. I just don't like it. Okay, in relation to people on the covers, I also hate when authors describe a character in great detail or what a character is wearing. First of all, with what they're wearing, it's usually the ugliest outfit ever, and in my head the whole scene I'm just like, oh my god, this is so embarrassing, like why is she wearing that? Or it just like gets outdated, like a book will be written in 2014 and she's wearing like a mint green skater skirt, and you're reading it in 2021 and you're like, ugh, that's so ugly. And then I also hate when they describe a character in great detail, being like, oh, she has this color eyes, this color hair, this shaped face, this kind of body. Like every single feature on her is described, and then it's completely like changing how I view them. I like it when it's like broad, like, oh, she's a brunette. Okay, then I get to pick a brunette that I picture. A trope I hate in books so much is insta-love. Actually, I hate instant attraction so much because it's usually so unrealistic. Like the guy, college-age jock, all of a sudden becomes obsessed with like this random girl at their school without even knowing her, without anything, and he's like pining after her. And like, yeah, sometimes it's fun to read, but it feels so unnatural and unrealistic because coming from a college student, I just know how unrealistic that is. Like, I need the build-up, a slow burn. Even if it's not a slow burn, at least half the book has to be them pining after each other with nothing actually happening. If they're like together right off the bat, I'm like, I don't love it. And I just don't like when books are super unrealistic. I know they don't always have to be realistic because it's like you're reading a book, there's no point in it being realistic, but basically I just hate when the character attraction is super unrealistic. Instantly they're in love and the guy's obsessed with her. It just doesn't feel natural to me reading it. I like when it feels like I'm reading something that could actually happen. One of my pet peeves is when the author describes the girl as being so embarrassing and so cringy, and like she says embarrassing things, she does embarrassing things. Like something about the quirky, like the over quirky character really annoys me. I always try to be like the heroine defender. Like people always hate on the girl characters in books, and I hate that. I try so hard not to, but when they're too cringy and too embarrassing, like I can't even read it. Like it's so like painful for me to get through when they keep embarrassing themselves. I don't like that really extremely quirky trope at all. It makes the character super unlikable to me, and I just like keep cringing throughout the book. I get the worst secondhand embarrassment from these characters. Usually it's the girl that's described this way, because if the guy was described this way, I would feel this way too, but it's usually the girl that's super quirky and cringy, especially when they like are in a situation and the girl starts rambling on and on and on and saying all of these embarrassing things, and then the guy cuts her off and she's like, oh my god, why did I just say all that? I'm like, I don't know, why did you say all that? I just don't like the quirky girl trope. I think that's just not my thing. Okay, I don't know why I didn't start with this, but my least favorite thing in books, I feel like everyone can agree on this, is miscommunication. Miscommunication that leads to a breakup, the characters don't talk to each other, and then they're apart for months for no reason, and you as the reader know it's a miscommunication, and you're just like, what? Literally just talk to each other. Literally have a discussion. You're dating. Talk to each other. It like also feels unrealistic because I feel like if you were in a relationship with someone and you had a problem, you would simply say it to them, be like, what is this about? But instead they'll just like give them the silent treatment, ignore them, and then they end up breaking up and not talking about why they broke up for months, and then they'll get back together and be like, oh, it was just a miscommunication. We wasted so much time. It's so annoying. I hate that trope when it feels like a forced breakup just because like the author needs to throw in a little drama at the end. If the miscommunication is the driving force of the book, like it's fine to have a little miscommunication in there that causes a little conflict and a little drama, but if the miscommunication is literally the plot of the book, nothing annoys me more than a miscommunication trope. Related to that, I also hate when the main characters break up because they're trying to like protect each other, because he's like, you could do so much better than me, like I'm a horrible person, I don't deserve you, whatever. Like let her make that decision. Why are you breaking up with her because you think you're not good enough? Like I hate it so much. And then they're apart for a while. I feel like that feeds into the miscommunication. Okay, another thing I hate, might be a controversial opinion, but I do not like enemies to lovers unless it is drawn out. If the characters are enemies, like in the beginning, like they don't like each other, and then 2 chapters later they're like friends, I'm like, oh, what was the point of them starting off as enemies? You could have started them off as friends. Or like they're enemies and they absolutely hate each other, and then all of a sudden 1 chapter they're like opening up to each other and like confessing all their feelings when they hated each other yesterday. It's like I need the gradual build up, and I think Mariana Zapata is like so good at doing that slow burn enemies to lovers. I need the build up with all the little moments in between them where it's like, oh, maybe they don't hate each other, but they haven't said it yet. They've shown it a little bit, but then they go back to being enemies. That's what I like. I don't like when it's like enemies to instant friends or enemies to lovers right away. I need a slow burn. If it's a rushed enemies to lovers and it's like they're enemies and then they're together right away, like by the halfway point, once they're together, the book is boring. Like I need the build up. The build up is the entire point of reading it. And then I want the book to end. Maybe have a chapter or 2 of them together and an epilogue, but I don't need half the book to be them together. Like that's boring. I need the whole book to be the build up, and then a few happily ever after chapters, and then it's over. That goes back to my insta love thing. So the same thing with enemies to lovers. Like once the enemies are together and they're no longer hating each other and fighting, it's like boring. Oh, this one annoys me so much. I always notice this in books. It is in so many books. Any books where there's a child, whether they have a kid, a single parent trope, an outside child, just a child in the book that talks like an adult and gives advice as if they're an adult, or like makes the main character come to a realization, and they're like 5 years old. Like what is a 5-year-old child going to tell you that you didn't already know yourself? And the child will literally talk like an adult or like a teenager, and it's like 8 years old. Like how is that child talking so maturely about a relationship? And it's in like every book where there's a kid. I'm like, a kid would simply not say any of this. Like a kid would be like, I'm gonna go play with my Legos and watch TV and go on my iPad. I'm not gonna sit here and lecture you about love. Oh my god, a pet peeve that I have, in my opinion, ruins the entire book. This is literally the entire Fallen Men series by Gianna Darling, is when they make a character too young when they could have just made them 2 years older and it would have been okay. Why do you have to make one of the characters in high school? Like you could have just made them in college and it wouldn't have affected the story at all. Like in the Fallen Men series, I could not look past the age gaps in these romances because the girl was always like fresh out of high school. It's like, why couldn't you just make her 20 instead of 18? It'd still be an age gap. The guy's still in his 30s. I literally couldn't look past it, and it made me like dislike the series so much because it was such an easy fix, because there was no reason to make her that young in every book. Like every trope there was someone that was significantly young. I still haven't finished the series because I'm like, oh my god, why is one of them always so young when the author could have just simply made the character a few years older? Like why not? I don't like that. It's like, why is she in high school? Like that's just not right. Like I feel like you could have just easily made that change and it wouldn't have affected the story at all. Oh my god, something that really irks me too. This is in so many books because I know it's like an efficient writing device to keep a reader hooked throughout the book, but when something is brought up from the beginning and it is repetitively brought up multiple times throughout the book and you don't know what it is and it keeps hinting at it, but you're like, okay, can you explain that now? Like I'm confused, and it keeps hinting at it, keeps hinting at it, keeps hinting at it from the very beginning through the entire book, and then you get to the end and you finally find out what it is, even if it's like worth it and you're like, oh, that's what's been going on. I wish the author would just mention it one time and then you'd be like, okay, can't wait to find out what that is. But when they mention it like every chapter, it starts getting so annoying because I'm like, okay, we understand there's something you're not telling us, because then that's all I'm thinking about while I'm reading. I can't even enjoy the book because all I'm thinking about is they're hiding something, or I don't know what this is yet and they haven't explained it yet. It's literally all I think about, and it distracts me so much. I like when a bomb drops at the end, like a whole like reveal, but I like how Colleen Hoover does this. She like hints at it like once, maybe twice, and that's it, and then you kind of forget about it, and then you get to the bomb drop, you're like, oh, I totally forgot he mentioned he was hiding something. But when the author brings it up every chapter, and then I just start getting annoyed because it's just getting repetitive now, especially when you finally get to it and it's underwhelming and you're like, that's what you've been hiding, or that's what I haven't known yet. It's really annoying when both characters know what happened and the reader doesn't, and you're waiting to find out what it is, and then when you get to it, it's like, that's it? That's what you've been mentioning and being so worried about and so stressed out about, and that was all it was? I'm like, what? Like, that's it? You got me hooked from the start trying to figure out what this is, and then you build it up all the way to just being something so minuscule. Okay, these are two things not specifically in books but about books. One is a pet peeve I have, is when people read companion novel series out of order. Say they took the Kings of Rittenhouse series by Maya Hughes. There's 5 books and they just read like the 4th book and then the 2nd book and then the 3rd book and then the 1st book. They skip all around. Like, yes, you can read them as standalones, but you shouldn't, because it's in chronological order. The author set it up that way for a reason, because you see one couple develop, and then in the next book they mention that previous couple, and you watch the next couple develop, and then in the 3rd book you see the previous 2 couples already together, and then the next couple forms, and it keeps going like that, so you get to see the dynamic of all the couples forming in order. Usually it's like a friend group, like off campus too, like if people read that out of order. It's all done chronologically. So when people read it out of order and then they're like, oh, I only read the 4th book, I don't want to go back to the beginning. It's like, no, you missed the whole build up. What makes the companion novel series so good is like when you get to the end and you see them all being together after watching them gradually form. It's so satisfying. And I know this, maybe this is just a preference thing, like I don't hate people that do this, I'm just saying, like, I can't read companion novel series out of order. I feel like that's just more of like a preference thing than anything, is I just like to read books in order. Like, I know you're excited to get to this specific book, but it just all the better when you finally get to the book you've been waiting for in a companion novel series after reading the whole thing and seeing the gradual build up in other people's books. It's my favorite thing ever. I love it so much. Another thing related to that is when people don't like my favorite books. I know this is like obviously something you can't control. People are not gonna like everything you like, but when they like hate on a book, a hardcore hater, like I see so many TikToks of people being hardcore haters on my favorite books. I try to never talk down on books, because you're allowed to have a different opinion, but people relate to books for different reasons and latch on to books for different reasons and love books for certain reasons that you're not gonna relate to. You can have your opinion, but like it annoys me so much because it's like, did you even read the same book as me? Like, how could we possibly have interpreted a book so completely differently? I'm so passionate about the books I love that when people aren't, I'm like, ugh, come on. Especially if they like read one book in the Addicted series and then they're like, it's not good. Please, it's 10 books long. How do you even know that? The first 2 books are an introduction. They're this big. If you read one of them, obviously you're not going to get into it. They're literally small ass books. Once you get to the 5th, 6th, 7th book, you're going to be so invested in it you can't even stop. But they don't even give it the chance. Also, I hate when people hate on a book saying it's toxic. Okay, you can read a book and acknowledge that it's toxic. That doesn't mean I want to replicate that relationship. It's a book that I connected to. It doesn't mean I want it. I'm an adult that can distinguish between fiction and reality. It's just really stupid that people think you can't read books about unperfect people. Like, obviously you're going to read books about problematic things, but that doesn't mean you yourself are advocating for the problematic parts of a book. And it really annoys me when people are like, you should be canceled for reading ugly love. Yeah, I just don't like when people are really, really rude and try to cancel people for reading stuff. I just don't like that, any of that. Back to things in books that I hate though. This is a big one that goes with miscommunication kind of, but it's when a character is trying to confess something, but they keep getting interrupted. So it's like when it finally gets unveiled what they've been trying to confess, they're like, I've been trying to tell you for like weeks, but you keep interrupting me. And then it's like this whole problem, like, why didn't you tell me sooner? And they're like, I tried to tell you, but you kept interrupting me, or kept getting interrupted. Like, this happens in so many books where I feel like the character is like, oh, I need to tell you something, and they're like, oh, just wait till later, we'll talk about it later. And then later comes around and then there's like something happens where they can't talk about it, and you're like, oh my god. And then it goes on for weeks where they're like, oh, I should have told them weeks ago, but now I had no opportunity to. And it just keeps getting pushed aside and pushed aside and pushed aside until it's like, oh my god, why didn't you tell me sooner? Whatever. That annoys me a lot. It's like, okay, just spit it out. If they're like, don't tell me right now, I'd be like, no, I need to tell you right now, but they're always just like, okay, I'll tell you later. Like, no, you need to tell them now or they're gonna be so mad. This is another thing that was like a big problem when I was reading Wattpad, kind of in a few books I've actually read that are published, but it's when the heroine of the book talks so negatively about other girls, like she's a pick-me. Like she's like, I'm not like the other girls. They just eat salad and eat their little bird food and I eat burgers and big meals, and oh, like they wear makeup and I don't. They call other girls like whores and sluts and like derogatory terms. I'm like, you're doing too much. You're really doing too much. And it really annoys me when the guy is like this, where they're like doing it together. I just don't like when girls are like talked down on, especially even if they're the antagonist of the book. Like I still don't want you to be like, she's a whore. Like it just completely turns me off and makes me dislike the characters, especially when the girls are doing it. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why are you being a pick-me right now? And then when the guys are doing it, I'm like, ew, you're just disrespectful and gross. Like I don't like you anymore either. Yes, you love this one girl the most, but why are you talking down about other girls? Especially when girls are fighting over a guy in a book. It's so embarrassing. Like I feel like there's so many times where girls are like fighting and arguing and like beefing over the main guy in a book, like fueling his ego, and it's like, why do you guys care that much? It's embarrassing that you guys are willing to fight over this man. He's not all that. Like, stop, please. And I feel like it just like goes along with like the constant thing where girls are portrayed in books and movies and stuff as like being so catty with each other and all they care about is like male attention. It's like annoying. Why do the girls have to be pitted against each other? I don't like that. Whenever that happens in a book, I hate it so much. Oh, does this irk me? So I hate in companion novel series or long series, and then you get to the very last book and the author's already said this is the last book, this is the end, and then it doesn't wrap up well. It doesn't have a cohesive, happy, all the characters make an appearance ending. I hate that so much. This is the one complaint I have about Briar U, is it didn't have like an epilogue that involved everyone. It was completely detached as if the other characters weren't even there, and I'm like, I just read 4 books and then you're gonna end it and I'm not even gonna get to see the other ones again. Like it's just over. Opposite to this, the Addicted Calloway Sister series, it's 10 books long, and the entire 10th book, it's like this big, is an epilogue novel with each character's perspective, and you get so much closure on the series. Like you watch their stories come to an end, every single character. It's just so satisfying. It's like, yes, I have to stop reading the series and I have to say goodbye and it's gonna be so sad. I'm gonna have the worst book hangover, but at least we got this satisfying ending with everyone coming together after reading all of their stories individually and getting like a cohesive, nice, happy ending. I hate books that end abruptly and like there's no satisfaction. You're kind of just left and you're like, what was that? That's how I felt with Briar U. Like if I don't get a satisfying ending, like I'm just gonna be sitting there for weeks like it's over. It doesn't feel over. Okay, I think this might be the last thing I'm gonna include in this video because this is getting pretty long and ranty. Last but not least, thing I hate is when a relationship in a book is built on lust or physical attraction. The core of the relationship and what kept them together was how much lust they had for each other and how physically compatible they were, rather than building an emotional connection from the start. I need a book where they have the emotional connection before the physical one. Like I need them to realize their feelings and basically fall in love with the person before even sleeping with them, because I feel like books where they like sleep together first, or like all they talk about with the other person is like how attracted they are to them or how much they want to be with them physically. I'm like, okay, is your relationship even real? You guys already know, like I don't really care much about smut. I'm not like a person that needs a lot of sex in books. Like I don't really care about that in books. Like I'm more there for the relationship than the physical stuff. So I get really annoyed when every single chapter they have to do it. Like, can't you guys have one conversation or like argue without it ending up you guys sleeping together? I don't know, I just don't like it. It makes me feel like the relationship isn't like as deep and as real, because I'm just like, okay, you guys were just like physically attracted to each other, but do you even like each other? Do you even know anything about each other? Like they have like 3 conversations. I need like the trauma, the backstory, the emotional connection forming and brewing over time. So that's the last thing I'm gonna talk about in this video of all the things I hate in books or dislike in books or my bookish pet peeves. If you agree or disagree, let's have a discussion in the comments. Let's all talk about things we hate in books. And if you love one of the things I talked about, that's okay, preference. There are a lot of books that I love that have many of these things in them, so it's not like I'll hate a book if it has this. These are just things I noticed that I usually don't prefer. So let's have a discussion in the comments. I'd love to hear what your guys' pet peeves are so I can add to my list. I would also like to do the reverse of this video, which would be things I love in books. Like if a book has this, I will love it. So if you want to see that, I'll start planning it. Let me know. Give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. All my social medias are linked down below as always if you want to go follow me on there, as well as my Amazon wishlist if you want to send me your favorite book. And I'll see you in my next video very, very soon. Bye!